Hey everyone, as always, Emil here with the pre-show. And boy, do we have some big announcements. So let's get right into it. First up, the first part of our 2000 follower celebration is now live on Twitter. Head on over to our pinned post in our profile to see our Ask Us Anything, where we will collect questions throughout the week to be answered in a separate episode of the show. We will also have announcements throughout September with other awesome stuff like giveaways. Second up, the world building panel Why Your World Matters is in fact getting a second installment. Yes, you heard it right. We have gathered up another set of 5 panelists that will be joining Sage on stream on September 25 at 3 PM EST or 9 PM CET for another 2-hour discussion about differences in world building and advice giving. Head on over to either our Twitter or Jason's Twitter at Jason_Zollinger for more information on that. With that, I don't think there's anything else for me to tell you, but to ask you to leave us a nice review or throw us a follow on social media or the podcasting platform of your choice. And with that, enjoy episode 31 of DoubleDM, where we will dive deep into our prep process and why prep is so important.
Hello and welcome back to DoubleDM podcast, to episode 31. This time with me again is my lovely co-host Emil.
Yeah, only this time. Next time I won't be here.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm good.
Anything specific happened to you?
A few things. I had my second COVID vaccine.
That's good.
But I had a lot of side effects. Yeah, no, I had a fever, I had headaches, I had a stiff arm, I was thirsty all the time, spent most of Tuesday only in bed, and yeah, after that it was great.
I was lucky I didn't have any of this except for the stiff arm.
Public service announcement sponsored by DoubleDM podcast. Wear a mask, go vaccinate yourself, do the good stuff, people. Do the good stuff.
And stay safe.
Stay safe, definitely. That's it for today on DoubleDM podcast.
See you on the next one.
So, I will just take this point. I have a session tomorrow. Players are standing in a temple, in an underground temple dungeon, by some sort of snake admirers or snake guards or something. And they just entered a cultist or prayer room with a big statue in the middle holding a red glowing orb. And they sometimes see red glowing ghosts circling around this orb or trying to attack them. And they have made their reservations of what is going to happen and what it's supposed to do. What I didn't expect them was at the last session to say, hey, we're leaving now.
Okay.
You go down into this dungeon for 2 days in-game time, and then you just decide to leave. To not do anything, you just leave. I mean, that's the thing, right? They didn't make that decision yet. They just said that it is an option to go back up without doing anything, which I would find as a DM weird, because why go down here if you are not gonna do anything?
Yeah, definitely weird, because usually if you throw something at your players, it doesn't really matter what they want to explore it in general, most of the time.
Yeah, mostly.
Even more so if you have red glowing ghosts swirling around a red glowing orb in the middle of a dungeon of snake gods / admirers. Most players will just want to explore what the hell is going on there.
Yeah, they didn't find out yet completely about this, and they aren't really supposed to, because I always say TTRPGs are about taking risks. If your players can always make the best calculated choice and basically are always right with that, then the game is not fun. They need to take some chances where they don't know what the outcome is gonna be to make the game fun. That's the fun. You can take those risks, right? Because if I would be in that dungeon with thousands of red ghosts and a red glowing orb, I would just decide to leave again, because I value my own life, and I understand that the player characters do, but they are also adventurers. They are not heroes, but they are adventurers. They are the ones that are supposed to take those risks.
Yeah, and one huge thing, you don't have any sort of magic or anything,
Yeah,
or
obviously.
experience with fighting magical beings and stuff.
Yeah, it's
So-
definitely different, but I always think that TTRPGs are about taking risk, right? You need to have some sort of risk taking to be fun, because dice rolls are uncertainty, right? You only roll dice if there is failure and success involved.
Yeah.
And that means taking a risk, right? The risk of a simple athletics check to climb a wall. That's a risk of making and not making it. But there are bigger risks of shooting that orb, what is gonna happen. We don't know. But we know that with a 75% chance, it will be good for us. Well, then you take that risk. Or, well, you decide if you take that risk or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that decision.
Yeah, I like to hear about it. And regarding risks, actually, in one of my campaigns I run the Rime of the Frost Maiden module.
Uh-huh.
2 of my players got cursed because they miscalculated the risk. They were searching a giant which had stolen some meat. So they went into his lair and found an old grave site of an ancient tribe. They found the sarcophagus of the tribe chieftain. They made history checks and found out, yeah, this is definitely the tribe chieftain in regarding to the cave paintings and stuff or carvings, and then decided to take a look inside. They found out that there is the skeleton with some tattered ropes, as there is 1,000 years after they died, but they found a wand and a pearl, like there were new objects lying in their hands, and they decided to take it. Turns out the grave was cursed to a degree to everybody who takes something out of this grave will not get the benefits of a long rest when they long rest. But the items itself aren't cursed. So the rogue, as the rogue does, took one of the objects, and the ranger took another object. Both of them can't be used by either a ranger or a rogue. Sad for them, but both ended up basically on the artificer, and now he has a wand of the war mage +1 and a pearl of power. But yeah, the rogue and the ranger now don't get any benefits from the long rest until they remove the curse, and they haven't figured out how yet. So this is something interesting to see expand or unfold.
Definitely. I mean, with a lot of things like grave robbing, for example, most of the characters I play would just say no to grave robbing.
Yep, same.
I think it's a thing of, while I believe the characters are different from me, and I'm not saying that I project that grave robbing is bad onto them, but I just think that basically every culture has something against grave robbing.
Yeah.
So doing that is, I never see a moment where any of the characters I really play would do it.
Exactly. And the problem is, most of the players and player characters thought it might be cursed, but did it anyways.
Wait, they thought it would be cursed.
Yeah, probably it is cursed, right? Let's just take it.
I mean, I talked about taking risks, but I'm not saying about taking dumb risks.
Yeah, well, let's see how this unfolds.
Very interesting to hear about that. I also had a session with my swashbuckling rogue Noel. Last time I talked about this, we fled from a city and we fled into the mountains. We found the castle where a wyvern is sitting atop the highest tower, which is fun because he's a semi-tamed one.
Okay.
He doesn't attack people, he only attacks animals. He doesn't attack people coming to that castle, except they provoke him. Which, I mean, having a wyvern, which is one, if you follow the lore that the stat block has, is very vile creature towards everything. It's a good guard dog.
Yeah, a wyvern guard dog is something to be scared of.
Yeah. I was like, wait, my criminal organization has a wyvern guard dog? Oh my god!
Yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah, also cleric came because a cleric came to us in the mountains. Our bard, it's a 2-player party, right? Our bard, sorcerer, warlock, multi-class. He is a weird multi-class whatever thing. And let's just say that he has a demon inside of him.
A demon?
Yeah.
Your player character or the cleric?
The cleric.
Okay.
No. The bard player character. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. But the thing is, I have the sword of this demon. So we both have demon things. And this cleric came to us and said, I can heal you from those demon things. And we both were like, nope.
Nope.
Not because we want the demon things. I want to say Noelle is, first of all, she hates everyone that paints the world black and white, which this cleric did in the first 5 seconds he came. You have darkness in yourself. I am the light. I can purge that darkness. And Noelle was like, nope, I don't believe you anymore already.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, that the demon inside our bard said to him, a liar will come. Do not believe him. And now the question is, do we believe our demon that's own intention is at least to keep the bard alive so she can take over the world at some point? Is to at least believe the demon that says the cleric that is gonna come is a liar to you and is not speaking truth? Or do we believe the cleric that out of his point of view probably speaks the truth? So
yeah,
that
interesting.
Who do you believe in this instance? Noelle made her mind clear. I don't believe anyone but myself because I'm a broody, edgy rogue.
Yeah.
No, but
good.
generally Noelle has no interest in helping anyone that says I am the light. I am the one that's against the darkness. Because Noelle has a twisted worldview. First of all, Noelle only sees the world as gray. Everyone is bad, everyone is good. But the thing with Noelle is she doesn't see herself as good. She might act good, but she's evil in her sense. She's a monster. And someone telling her that they can destroy monsters for her just means I am better than you. And for a fact, she knows that most of the people that say that are just as bad as she is. Making assumptions about someone else, saying someone is bad because they believe in something different, that is something Noelle goes quite hard against. So this cleric Noelle asked the cleric to prove that he is a good one. And a lot of the times Noelle does this is prove it to me, is her exactly knowing that there is no way for this person to prove it to her. She just wants to know how powerful they are. That is Noelle. Like, she said, okay, prove to me that you are actually a cleric of a goddess of light. So what the cleric did is cast Stone of Truth. Noelle steps in and I pass the charisma saving throw. I can still lie. And Noelle is like, well, this doesn't prove anything. Just waved your hands around and the magic effect appeared. There's nothing magical about this. There's nothing powerful. He then said, I can ask my goddess a question for you. I asked the question as Noelle. I got an answer. And while I, as the player, totally understand and would accept that offer, Noelle didn't even care. For Noelle, that wasn't enough, right? This dude had no way of convincing Noelle that he's good through magical powers or godly powers, but rather only through saying that he wasn't right to say that he is the light and Noelle holds a darkness in her hands with the sword, because that is basically a deal breaker for Noelle. Someone painting the world black and white. At that point, he already lost any conversation he would have had with Noelle. There wouldn't have been any way for him to get what he wanted out of her without having to fight her. Yeah, Noelle is fun.
Yeah.
That is a lot of fun because I get to point so many middle fingers at NPCs, but in a way that it isn't toxic to the game. Noelle still has a lot of stuff to work with for my DM and a lot of NPCs to work with. But if there comes a cleric around and he says, I am the light, you have a darkness, she's basically, nope, fuck you.
I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And you better be as well or else. Sounds like a fun one.
It is a fun one. I put a lot of effort into my characters when I get to play them for campaigns, because I don't get to play them often for campaigns.
I heard about it. we have to change that at some point.
Every DM needs to play.
Yeah.
Every player needs to DM.
Exactly.
We talked about this in episode 23 already, but I would like to bring it up again. We said everybody preps, everybody improvs, everyone has their own balance to the two, and it is important everyone has their own balance of the two. Do you agree?
Of course I do.
Why?
Because if you would prep everything, every possible way the players could react or anything like it, you would basically write a book and then just go ahead and write a book and don't play a TTRPG. But even if you have a preface or a basic understanding of how you want to play your campaign or in which direction it should go, you already did some sort of prep in what shape or form, whatever. You thought about stuff regarding your game to come. Bam, you did some prep. There you go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, again, the thing is, I want to say this now, but we will go into this a little bit later in the discussion again. Nobody can fault you for the amount amount of prep or the amount of improv you do. It's your style. It's the way you want to run your game. And it's important you find your own style in that and not just copy someone else. It won't work for long. So I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
How does the prep process look like for you?
Well, my prep process is basically I start to recap what happened in the last session.
Okay, first, right to that.
Yeah.
The recap. So you also start with writing a recap, or do you only recap that for yourself?
Both. First, I recap it for myself. And then after I've done most of my prep, I write a recap and find a conversion from that recap to my opening theme, scene, statement, whatever.
Okay, I'm the same. Right after the session ends, I spend the next 10 minutes recapping the session for myself and writing the recap. And then I let my prep rest for at least a day or two.
Yeah.
Because that way I can think about what is going to happen next. I'm going to think about the implications, what comes from it, but I just let it sink in. That's the most important part. To not prep instantly everything. At least for me. That's the way I work.
Yeah.
But the recap, I do instantly.
That's something I have to try, because I always wait 2 or 3 days, then I prep, and then I'll just write the recap right then and there. But I usually don't write it right after the session, because it just feels too fresh to recap it right away. But I'll have to try it once.
That's why I do the recap right after, because it's still fresh. I still have all the information in my head.
I mean, don't get me wrong. During the session and right after, I'll take notes and bullet points, which I then use to recap. But I'd rather talk with my players right after the session and recap it as a group.
Oh yeah, that's what we do too. But I mean, as soon as I leave the voice call.
Ah, I see. Okay, I'll have to try that one.
The thing about that is it's simple because it's how I start my sessions. My sessions start with a recap, me recapping for my players what happened last time. I know some people say you should let your players do this, and I understand why, but I did try it, and my players are fucking bad at it, and I don't want to train them into doing it good. I just do it myself and it works.
Yeah.
They did. For like 2 months of sessions, it didn't work a single time. They always left stuff out that I had to put in there because it was important. They never focused on important stuff. We had players that basically recap a session in one single sentence. Last time we were in Waterdeep, and that was it. And we had players that spoke for 10 minutes of recap, 10 minutes of the session, a full recap, and that's too long. It never worked, so I make it myself. And how my recap works, I recap, and then basically fluently I go over into the description of the opening scene. So, for example, my players tomorrow will hear something along the lines of, you've went to the dungeon, you've descended down into the halls, you found ancient statues, ancient rooms, ancient tools, a pool of lava, a pool of acid. You entered a room, a strange room, a statue in the middle, atop a pyramid, holding a red glowing orb. That is where we left off last time, basically. Now, the next sentence would be, and as you stand in that room with the red glowing orb, you've seen the ghosts swirling around. You've known that you can't open the big stone doors that lead into this room. What do you do? And that way I recapped and also opened the session up to them. I basically write the the opening of that day's session and end it always with a question, what do you want to do? Or what are you doing now? Or simply asking a single player character, what do you want to do? So yeah, that's why I do my recaps basically instantly. So I have them instantly ready when I want to prep, and I don't have to write them anymore, so I can then instantly write the opening scene, because that is something I separate. I make the recap and then I basically add the opening later on when I prep. And to add that, I need to have the recap there, and I do the recap instantly because it just works better, because then I can still take it all in and collect it all into the best recap I can make.
I'll definitely give it a try next time. But after all of this recap and opening scene things, I usually start with looking at what did happen in the session and how do I want the next session to end story-wise. I usually look at the story progression to have an opening which leads to some sort of story progression in a forward direction.
I mean, the thing is, the AMP's only job is to keep the story from halting, or
Yeah.
at least it's one of the jobs, right? The biggest job is make sure everyone has fun, make sure everyone is safe or feels comfortable at the table, and then is also keep the story from halting, right? And that's why what you said is, in my opinion, very true. Having something where you want to end is great, or having at least the direction the session is supposed to go.
Exactly. Having a plan where you want the session to go in which direction you want. So if the players don't keep the story going, you can just kick their butts in the right direction again to stop the story from halting. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can do that in any way you want. You can do that by simply nudging them, having an NPC give up new information that they need to go into that direction anyway. But if you have the direction you want them to go, I have to say this is not necessarily railroading. This is just having a direction, right? If your players go a different direction and you basically force them to go a one way, that we can talk about as railroading, but generally having a direction in your head is not railroading.
Yeah, or basically you don't have a specific way in your head how they should get there, but you have a goal where they should end up. And how they get there is basically their own.
Again, it's just this thing of stop the game from halting. If the players don't know what to do, are just sitting there doing nothing, you as the DM have to step in and move them somewhere. And for that to do, you need to have some way of direction, some goal, some point of interest for them. If you don't have that prepared, you would have to end the session in that moment and just say, we will meet next time. I will revisit this and rewrite this so you guys know what to do. If you have a plan, you know at least where to send them. And that's the important part, because nobody likes a game where they sit around the table for 2 hours doing nothing. And as we said, a DM's job is to make sure everyone is having fun. So yes, your job is also to ensure the game is not halting, because I have never seen a game that is halted be fun. Never. It just isn't fun sitting around a table doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I also prep the opening scenes, right? What most of the time comes with that is a description of that scene, a description of the location, or the NPCs that are in that location. So yeah, I prep descriptions of NPCs and locations, and I can also tell you why I prep a lot of descriptions. Because I'm hella bad at improvising descriptions. I can do it if I have a lot of other stuff. I need to prep a lot of stuff about this NPC, a lot of the description about this NPC, so that I can then, on top of that already great construct of an NPC description, can improvise it more if I need to. But the clothing, the hair, the body structure, the way of walking, all of that stuff are stuff I prep if I think it's important to describe it. Because, for example, I am bad at doing voices and accents. So how I counteract that is by describing the way this NPC talks before they talk. Like, this NPC, he speaks with a very low, muzzled voice through his beard. And then I can do that, but I am hella bad at doing it consistently for NPCs.
Yeah, I feel that.
And that is why I prep a lot around NPCs to make them still feel immersive and real to the players, because I can't do it through voices. So I prep it through descriptions. And that is why I do a lot of descriptions of those. So yeah, I prep a lot of descriptions of locations and NPCs because it makes it easier for me to convey the immersion that I want to give to my players with that.
Yeah.
Again, I have my own style of prep. Someone else might find voices and accents very easily. So you might not have to do it this way, but you have to maybe prep something else where I don't even have to prep. That's both of us have different styles, and the most important part is that we both agree that is fine. We can discuss our different ways, but we have different ways, and that's important.
Yeah. Now, what I like to prep with NPCs and locations is specifically environmental challenges most of the time for the locations, if there are any, and not just the allies or quest givers in NPCs, but the villains, the monsters, and all the things as well. If a stat block is coming up, I'm looking up the stat block. If I need some sort of motivation or tactic the villain uses, I'll prepare that. All that. This is just what I usually do right after the story progression, like you do with NPCs and locations. I'll do the same, but on different aspects most of the time. And then I usually go into possibilities where I can weave in backstory elements for my players. I don't do this every time, but if it feels natural and right, I take a look at where in the session I can put it and how I can use it. And then I go back to the NPCs and locations and maybe add some to that.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great way to bind in the backstory, because you basically have a session construct and then look, how can I tie it to the players to make it even more engaging for them? And even if I don't find anything, I don't have to throw the whole session prep away, because it was built on the single backstory element. Okay, yeah, I can see that. That's good. I might have to do that.
When you are in a backstory arc anyways, it is pretty easy to weave in backstory elements, of course.
Yeah.
But if you finished one and are back on the main plot, then I'll start looking for opportunities where I can weave in other backstory elements as well.
Yeah. What I also like to do in prep is battle maps, looking at the battlefield of a combat. And I can now tell you why. And I think we will go into this in our episode about combat part D or du or whatever zwei or whatever. Because we need to do part 2 of that one. We have so much more to talk about on that one. Home advantage is what I call it. If your players walk along a path and some bandits come out of the bushes and attack them, the bandits prepared an ambush. But that does not mean that they just used cover to hide. They prepared the battlefield. They might have laid traps in the bushes. So when the players walk there to hide, they might step into a bear trap. Maybe there's a pit somewhere. Maybe there's a tripwire or something. That's the thing. I always look at the battlefield and decide how the side that I am playing, which is the monsters or the NPCs, are gonna behave on that field. That also means, do they know the battlefield? Like, if you enter, like, that's the thing with lair actions, for example. They are the best example of this. If you enter a Black Dragon's lair, it's their home advantage. They can use extra things in that lair because that lair is specifically made for them. They prepared it. And I think this goes even further, because it's bandits or kobolds, goblins, they are great examples of enemies using things to their advantage. Traps, hideouts, ambush, tactics.
The environment itself.
Yeah, those are all things that it's important to use the environment, right?
Yeah.
A tree is not only a tree. The bandits maybe had an axe, so maybe they hit a tree to the point where it's nearly falling. And then they hit it a few more times when something comes the way to block the path, making it way harder for these people to escape. And that's the thing. I make sure to look at the battlefield to make it feel like it's being used. Because a battle map, if you have a battle map, you have a vision of the encounter. You have a vision of the environment. Use that vision. Because if it's static, you don't need the battle map. You just need a grid.
Yeah.
If you have different heights, someone needs to climb up there. If the bandits are have the high ground, they might make sure that nobody can get to them on the high ground. Maybe grease the walls so nobody can climb up anymore. Have some rocks they can throw at the people climbing with their foots, or some boulders or whatever, right? And those are all things that I prep when I look at the battle map. I prep looking at the battle map. How is the side that I'm portraying, which is the enemies to my players, gonna use this battlefield? If my players have home advantage, right, that means they mostly know the battle map. For example, my players have, in one of my campaigns, they have a home in Waterdeep. They have a battle map for that house. They never used it to battle anything, but it's a battle map. I gave it to them, saying, if it ever comes to a fight, this is your home. This is your home advantage. And they all know this house very well. They have a home advantage. They might even lay traps there at some point. They can block off rooms. They know the ins and out. They may have secret passages, right? Those are things that they can prepare the battlefield as well. It's always a thing of who owns the battlefield.
Yeah.
The answer can also be none, nobody. That's also a fine answer.
But if someone owns the battlefield, they usually prepare it in some way. And so you have to prepare the way they would prepare the battlefield.
Yeah. And you cannot do that as improv, in my opinion. At least I can't.
That's just way too hard for me as well. It's coming up with a way someone prepare the battlefield right on the spot.
Mm.
That's hard.
Okay, so I think we should go to the next question.
I think so.
Okay, let me ask you, what helps with prep?
The first thing that comes into my mind is obviously note taking in sessions, so you can recap easier. And what I use for that usually is OneNote, because it just makes things so easy to jump from one chapter to another without losing too much time filing through some sort of paper stack you have lying around.
Yeah, I have a big notebook for all my campaigns. Like, I have a notebook that I copy for every campaign, and it includes things like world information. Every player's character sheet I have there. Every major NPC has its own page. Every faction and country in the world that is important to this plot has its own page. I have a growing list of stat blocks, so I actually can see which monster my players have already fought. Because that is also something that I like to prep. Reoccurring enemies. But also enemies I'd never encountered. And I have that list so I can see what have they fought before, so I can prepare that. I also have a single note page for every session, starting with the recap and opening scene. And then it goes into whatever I need for that. Sometimes it's bullet points, sometimes it's tables, sometimes it's battle maps with stat blocks, sometimes it's just links to the NPCs they're gonna talk to and what the NPCs want and information and all that stuff. It varies wildly, but what OneNote does is give me the opportunity to do it for every single type of session I run. I can do the prep however I want because it's basically a blank slate and I can do it every time. And like you said, it's so easy to basically link to another page and give you the opportunity to switch to that page very quickly. For example, to an NPC, scroll through there and see, okay, this NPC has a flaw. That flaw is being way too arrogant for their own good. Boom, switch back. Okay, and then you can go through the stuff this NPC wants, has, and what or not all you need for the discussion you have with your players right now with that NPC. But no, that NPC is arrogant as fuck. Play him arrogant as fuck. Boom.
Yeah.
Simple, and you can look it up every single time you need it.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
Especially for longer campaigns where you have reoccurring NPCs and reoccurring world lore or anything that is just not one time only. You can link to that every time you mention it in your document. And just click the link, bing, there you go.
Do the prep. Like, I work in IT, so my whole job description is be the one that does the work so no one else has to do it again anymore, more or less. I write algorithms, I write code, I write programs that are supposed to make life for someone else easier or basically take whole chunks of their job away. I automate simple progresses that you have to do every time, and I make sure that you only have to do it, and that I have to do it one time way harder than it's supposed to be, but then it's for the rest of eternity way easier than it's supposed to be. Like this, you make the prep, you prep that NPC once, and then you basically just link to that page and never have to prep the NPC again. Basically just add to it. Very simple, very easy.
Yeah, and that's one reason why we prep in general as well.
Yeah.
It helps you run the game more comfortably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I said, in the beginning, everyone has their comfort zone. It's important to remember this does not mean, however, that you should not take steps out of that comfort zone, but only, now comes the weird paradox there, if you feel comfortable with taking that step.
Yeah, you sometimes have to push your boundaries a bit, but not too much that it feels unnatural to you.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? As a DM, and this is why we have this podcast, I always want to improve. I never want to stop improving. What that means, however, is doing stuff that I might not enjoy the first time or the second time or the third time, but gradually doing it and doing it often will make sure that I'm getting good at it, that I'm improving on it, and that I'm at some point probably enjoying it, implementing it in my style.
Yeah.
And now I have to say, if you ever try something and it really does not fit you, you don't have to do it again. Just take the step back, wait for a few months, and do it again if you feel like it. That's the thing. Do what you're comfortable with, because that's the most important part as a DM. Your job is to make sure everyone has fun and enjoys a good story or a good game.
And that includes you as the DM as well.
It includes you, but also what it includes is you can only do that if you feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
And that is do the prep you need because it helps you to run the game comfortably. And that is why I do prep. All the prep I do is making sure that I, when it comes to the session, am good running the session.
Yeah.
So the job of a DM is, like we said often enough, stopping the game from grinding to a halt, right? Prep, for example, like we said, you have a goal, right? It's where the session is supposed to lead. That stops the game from grinding to a halt. Having an NPC prepared stops the game from grinding to a halt because you don't have to look up the NPC or make it up in your head. You can just have it. Whatever you need to stop the game from grinding to a halt and to run the game comfortably for your players is the prep you need. And you need to find, and now the important part is, you need to find that yourself.
Yeah, and you touched on one thing there quite briefly. Looking up an NPC or making it up in your head. So either you could have prepared it first or have some sort of pre-written module. Do you think there is a difference between preparing your homebrew campaign and the pre-written stuff?
Yes, a lot of stuff. In a homebrew setting or in a homebrew campaign, you write your own storyline, you write your own NPCs, you write your own everything, more or less, right?
Yeah.
You need to do a lot more pre-prep, is what I call it. You need to prep a world, a storyline, a campaign design, and all that stuff, so you can actually start making a campaign, running a campaign.
Yeah.
Pre-written campaigns or pre-written modules take that more or less away from you, but in a different way.
Yeah, you still have to do all the prep stuff. You don't have to, but we usually do all the prep stuff we discussed earlier, but in a different way when we prepare pre-written modules and our homebrew setting.
I mean, the thing is, when you have a module, I expect a good module to basically have all the information I need to run the game.
Yeah.
So I need to read that. In a pre-written module, you have chapters, for example. You need to read those chapters. In a homebrew setting, you would need to write that chapter, which is arguably more work, yes, but it also gives you way more creative freedom, in my opinion.
It is a lot more flexible in many ways if you write it yourself.
Again, the thing is, whatever you're comfortable with, go with that. Nobody should shame you for running pre-written modules or a homebrew game. Nobody can, nobody should.
Exactly.
Now I want to ask you something.
Okay.
We talked a lot about prep and of improv in episode 23, which is about improv, and this episode about planning and prepping. What about the quantum challenge?
The quantum challenge?
You don't know what the quantum challenge is?
I don't, or at least I don't think I do.
Okay, I think you know the problem, but not the way I describe it. Okay, let me describe it for you. If your players walk a path, that can be a literal path or a figurative path, right? It doesn't have to be a path they are actually walking, but just a way in the story. And you have a fork, diverting path coming up, and you anticipate your players to go the right path, and they go left. Do you move the encounter you had on path right to the left part? Do you have encounters prepared for both? Or do you just wing the left part completely?
First of all, I wouldn't move the encounter from the right to the left path in general, because especially if we talk about a literal path they are going, I won't change the locations in the world just to fit the campaign or the way the players decided to go. I usually have some sort of small idea of an encounter which I can put there on the left path. In general, I don't have an encounter in the same detail prepared. But what I do in this situation is when they get closer to that encounter, I'll stop right before that and then prepare this one instead. If it is in the start of a session, it is a little harder to do, but winging it can sometimes be the way for me. It depends on the setting.
For me, it's very simple, actually. Do whatever you want to do in that moment, because that is quantum.
Yeah.
I have been asked this question several times, and I always answered the same. Do whatever you want to do in that moment, because that is how quantum physics, right? This is where the quantum comes from.
Yeah.
Just do whatever the fuck you want. Nobody's gonna know.
Yeah, just be like Homelander.
The thing is, what I mean with that is, for example, yes, I've moved encounters from the right to the left path. I won't hide that. Yes, I've winged the left path completely. But what I say is, if you do the moving too often, it's not effective.
Yeah.
That's my opinion of it, because there's this image, there's this funny image of a cow standing in front of a wall. There are two ways to go into that wall, and there's a small part in the wall that separates the two. That part ends right after it started. So the cow can go left or right, but it ends always in the same way. And that's the illusion of choice, right? And that's what you do. If your players can go left or right and you move the encounter to whichever path they go. And that's fine. Giving your players the illusion of choice is totally fine. The thing about it is you need to still have choices that matter. Because if all the choices they do are just an illusion, then you have failed the game. Or, failing. Simple, in my opinion, not giving your players a choice is taking away all their agency if they don't have a choice. And then you can write the book. Then you prep everything, right?
Yeah.
But what I will say is, now comes the thing why the quantum challenge, for example, is always such a fun thing to talk about, in my opinion. The thing is, if people, I have moved, right? Like I said, I have moved from right to the left path. And if people say, well, that's just an illusion of choice, then I answer, well, I would have made it even simpler. I wouldn't have included the left path. If I really just want them to go to this encounter, why would I have a diverging path? Why would I throw in an illusion of choice if I have the option to not do it? Like, what do I get from throwing in an illusion of choice? Nothing.
Yeah.
I gain virtually nothing, in my opinion. The thing is, I still do it, but only when I feel it appropriate. But a lot of people argue that you put a path left or right because it would make sense in this world. And I'm like, no, I am the dungeon master. It now doesn't make sense anymore. There's a big mountain in the middle. You have to go the right path and need to take a way around this mountain to go left where you want to go. Boom, the players are again on the right path. Haha. And right, that's the thing. I don't understand why people, like, again, it's totally fine to move that encounter if you think that having the left path or the right path lead to two different ways. And moving a combat encounter, for example, or a single story encounter from right to left is okay. But the path choice should still matter in some way.
Definitely. And if you say it or if you use it in a literal way, using the left or the right path, they can still lead to the same location, but through different means. There can be another story point in there as well. You can explore different story points along the way while going to the same location.
Yeah, that's basically it for me. I just hate people, like, again, I can only say this often enough. Moving that encounter is fine.
Yeah.
But saying that's just an illusion of choice and therefore not good is wrong. Because if it would be an illusion of choice, I wouldn't have included the left path. But I believe that moving a story encounter from the right to the left path that is story important, while the choice of going left still changes the story, but they will still get the information on the left path, then it's fine. Then yes, move it all the time. But do not move it and basically have the choice not matter.
Yeah.
The choice doesn't have to matter for the literal thing you have, for the encounter you move. That doesn't have to matter, right? But it should have some impact later on.
Definitely.
They go to a different town. The town is different from the one they would have met at the right path. Maybe in the left town, they will just find a new ally that they wouldn't have found in the right town. And in the left town, they will get the information that, well, their target was the right town. And now they have made an impactful choice while you still move the encounter to the left path.
Yeah.
That's not an illusion of choice anymore. And that's the thing. If it really becomes an illusion of choice, if I realize that me having divergent path is just an illusion of choice and really just that, I don't include it. If I have included this and I move an encounter and if I move an encounter, there will still be a matter to the choice because that's important.
Definitely.
So yeah, that was hard to explain.
Yeah, quantum shit is always hard to explain.
Quantum shit. Okay, to summarize what we just did in this episode is do whatever level of prep you are comfortable with, cause this is about you. Prep is not a dick measuring contest, also not a race. Prep is for you and you alone. You can't do someone else's prep, and no one can do yours for you. Find out what you need to prep to run comfortably, and you have found your prep level. Prep is supposed to make you feel comfortable and give you the ability to stop the game from halting. building. If you, however, run into something you didn't prep, that's fine. Just stay calm about it and do whatever you feel in the moment is the best course of action.
Yeah, +1 to that.
+1. Okay.
So, this is the end of our episode. You should follow us on Twitter, Instagram at DoubleDM Pod. We also have a Discord server, which you are welcome to join anytime. The link is in our link tree, which is in the pin post on our Twitter. Yeah, then that's basically it. Thank you guys for listening. See you on the next one, and bye-bye.